Yo, I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of September 17th. Danuch! Lots to talk about, right? Last week we had some action over in the UK. We had some good action here in America. This week we have some action coming up from all over the world. But real quick, let's get into some news and notes. The Fury-Klitschko rematch is finally on October 29th, and it's going to be in Manchester, which I think actually makes the rematch more intriguing. Look, the first fight was god-awful. It was almost a year ago, right? I think it was last November. So you guys know the situation with Fury hurt his foot earlier this summer. That postponed things. It took forever to get this thing negotiated. And recently, Fury was trying to change the deal. Vladimir Klitschko went public, threatening to go to court to sue him. So things almost got ugly, but cooler heads prevailed. Now it's going forward October 29th. I like it in Manchester. I think it's going to be a more lively crowd. A lot of the German fight crowds just aren't very loud and lively. I don't know if it's just the culture over there, the fan culture or what it is, but the stuff over in the UK, it's just more fun. And look, let's be real. Fury won the first fight. He deserves to call the shots as to where the rematch is going to be. So they delivered the venue, the date, all that good stuff. It works out. I think the rematch, because of the location, because of the questions surrounding Fury with the injury he had, the layoff, it's been almost a year. We know Klitschko stays in the gym. We know Fury doesn't always do that. He'll kind of sit on his butt. He'll party. There's been stuff on social media where he's been out drinking with people, posting videos of it, right? So all the questions surrounding that, and then given the fact that it's in a different venue, I think makes this rematch even more intriguing. It's lost a lot of steam though. So HBO will broadcast this here in the United States, will broadcast that fight. It'll probably be another afternoon telecast, which it'll be interesting to see the kind of rating it gets. I'm not so sure it's going to get a very good rating because of all the steam that's been taken off. But finally, that thing is scheduled and the heavyweight division can move on a little bit because it's kind of been waiting around, seeing what's going to happen. And it's not just with this fight, but some other things. I've talked about Luis Ortiz and some other stuff. But, the champion of the world, the heavyweight champion of the world needs to fight. So glad this one is scheduled. I wanted to get to one other thing. Daniel Jacobs, the WBA, I don't know if it's regular, interim, whatever the hell title he has, one of the WBA middleweight titles. The middleweight titleist out of Brooklyn. Of course, he fought Sergio Mora last week. I'll talk about that fight itself in a second, but during the build-up to the fight, there was an interview, and I don't know if he was just trying to make headlines to try to help promote the fight with Mora because nobody wanted it the first time around. They sure as hell didn't want to see the rematch. But he was asked about not getting the kind of love that some other fighters are getting around the world, and him being a guy from Brooklyn, New York, that has fought at Barclays several times. He's fought in the city at Madison Square Garden several times. Why he doesn't get more love, why he's not more popular. And he alluded to what he believes could be a reason that it's a racial thing, okay? And, you guys know that this is a sensitive subject for me for a multitude of reasons, a lot of it being how I grew up. But look, my perspective on this is very unique and diverse. I have a unique perspective on these issues because I have lived in so many different parts of this country. I've lived and been a part of so many different communities. Pretty much every neighborhood I've lived in, it's in some way I've been a minority in that neighborhood. So I'm used to mixing it up and talking to people of different backgrounds. I have a diverse family, and my perspective on this is just different than what the mainstream media and what college professors in Hollywood promotes. Danny Jacobs is absolutely clueless if he truly, truly believes that the reason he's not a big star is because he's a black guy. This is an argument that gets made a lot, and it comes from different parts of the media, and not just the black media complex, but the left-wing white media complex as well, which is pretty much the mainstream media in this country. It's something that's promoted over and over again. And when it comes to the fight game, it's no different than any other sport in the fact that if you put up a good product, fans show up. It doesn't really matter what ethnicity you are. I'm sick of this debate in boxing that you have to build up a fan base with your ethnicity or the media with your ethnicity to get ahead in the world in boxing. That's really not how it works. Sometimes it's a nationalistic thing. A lot of Mexican fans or people of Mexican heritage, whether they be American or from a different part of the world, whether they live in a different part of the world, but their heritage is Mexican, I'm saying. Follow Mexican fighters, right? And you could say the same with Puerto Rican fighters or Italian fighters or whatever it is. Yes, the nationalistic pride and sometimes ethnic pride is a component. I grant you that. But in countries, diverse countries like the United States of America, that's really not a factor, okay? And I'm going to give you two examples of non-Hispanic black Americans. I'm not talking about black Hispanics like Rigondeaux and guys like that. Different issue. I'm talking about non-Hispanic black Americans that that have fan love. Let's start with Terrence Crawford, okay? Now, Terrence Crawford isn't a big superstar, but he's a regional draw in his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. And it's not black people only showing up to his fights in Omaha. His promoter knows what the hell he's doing, and they built a local thing there in Omaha. And Crawford has fought several times there and done very, very good crowds. And it's not as if he's fought big stars like Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao. He's fought guys that most people in Omaha, Nebraska probably can't even pronounce the names of some of the guys Terrence Crawford has fought there. Big sellout crowds, big, lively, energetic crowds. And if you look in the crowd, it's mixed. It's probably mostly Anglo and black. It's Omaha. There's not many people in between. That's pretty much the two groups that comprise Omaha, Nebraska. But it's a diverse crowd in that perspective. It's basically the same crowd you would get for a college football game there, right? And it's not just, that's a top-ranked fighter, right? Terrence Crawford. We could point to an Al Haymon fighter, which is a guy in Daniel Jacobs' universe. Deontay Wilder from Alabama. The few times that Haymon has got it right and put Deontay Wilder on in Alabama, same thing. Large, passionate crowds, and if you look at the makeup of the crowd, it's not like it's a Farrakhan rally or a Black Lives Matter rally in the crowd. It's a diverse, mixed crowd. It's even mostly Anglo. It looks like the same demographic makeup you would see at an Alabama college football game. They're showing up for Deontay Wilder when he fights at home. They're showing up for Terrence Crawford. There's several reasons why, but one of the reasons is those guys actually fight. Another thing, for Deontay, yes, he's a heavyweight, but he's got a big personality. He's got one of the best personalities in all of American boxing. I think he should be a bigger star than he is, but he's not promoted nationally. But from his little local fan base there, he is promoted very well. And if you look at Danny Jacobs, he could walk down the streets of Brooklyn, and it doesn't matter if it's Italian kids, Puerto Rican kids, black kids, Anglo kids, Jewish kids. They don't know who the hell he is because he's not promoted. He's not promoted locally. Yes, he's fought in that area. He's fought in Barclays several times. But who the hell has he fought? What memorable performances has Danny Jacobs given you other than last December against Peter Quillen and back in 2010 against Dmitry Pirog at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas? By the way, those are the only two opponents that were good opponents that Danny Jacobs has fought in his entire professional career. That's the big problem, right? And that big career-defining win in December against Peter Quillen, that one round of work in a very exciting knockout, which, by the way, did a good crowd, did a good rating. It was on Showtime, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that was one of those PBC on Showtime deals. So the career-defining performance of his career wasn't even on network television. So he can point to race, but every time somebody goes down that typical, predictable, social justice warrior, regressive left talking point, every time they go down that path, I can give you 3 or 4 examples that counter that argument that are very legitimate. And I'm not even going to talk about fighters in other countries. Like I've talked about the UK before and how they come out and support regardless of what the guy's ethnicity is. Fans, sports fans in America do the same thing. Google the top 100 highest paid American athletes. There's a lot of black guys on that list, okay? Walk around here in Los Angeles, you see a lot of Kobe Bryant jerseys. You see a lot of jerseys of guys that, you know, quote unquote, look like Daniel Jacobs. I'm not saying that. That's what he says, okay? So this argument, and look, Floyd Mayweather made this argument years ago. I remember an interview where Floyd Mayweather said, if I was white, quote unquote white, I would be the most popular athlete in America. Floyd has said a lot of stupid things. That was perhaps one of the dumbest. That's at least in the top 10. That comment is so asinine. I don't even know where to start to unpack that. But the fact that he was the highest paid athlete in the world and he was a relatively dull boxer that weighs 150 pounds soaking wet in a country where sports fans are obsessed with size says a lot. And the fact that he got away with some of the things he got away with and blah, blah, I can go into a whole bunch of stuff. You guys, you know, we've been down that road a million times. I'm just sick of this argument, okay? There are other fighters that have built up regional fan bases where they live, and you start small, you build big. And then there's foreign guys who have relocated and done it. You guys know where I'm going to go with this one with Gennady Golovkin here in Los Angeles. He built up a local fan base here, and then they took the show on the road. It's about fighting often. It's about being entertaining, being open to media, being open and accessible to fans. Guys, the formula, the blueprint's out there. I'm sick of the arguments that certain ethnicities of fighters get more love than others. That's a crock of shit. It's not the 1950s, okay? Join the 21st century, guys. Life is good here. Life is a lot better in the 21st century than it was in the 20th century. Join us. Come with us. Join the 21st century. And if Danny Jacobs really wants to be a big star, he should take a page out of other fighters out there who are more popular than him, who have taken less money to make fights happen, to fight often. They've traveled, they've fought on the road, they've done what they need to do to make fights happen. Danny ain't doing that, okay? Has nothing to do with race. Let's move on. Let's get into some of the reviews of last week's action. Speaking of Daniel Jacobs, he scores a 7th round TKO over Sergio Mora last Friday in Reading, Pennsylvania. Mora was dropped in the 4th and the 5th and dropped 3 times in the 7th, and finally the ref just waved it off and nobody complained from Mora's side. I thought a couple of the knockdowns were borderline, like punches to the back of the head or pushes. But either way, Daniel Jacobs completely controlled this fight. It's how the first fight should have looked had he fought a little more disciplined the first time around. He was just a little sloppy and careless, and that's how he got dropped. I never thought he was hurt in that first fight against Mora. That's ridiculous. And once he settled in that first fight, he was dominating that fight as well. So look, nobody wanted to see this fight the first time. Sure as hell didn't want to see it the second time around. So hopefully Daniel Jacobs will start fighting people we care about. Starting with Gennady Golovkin, who we'll talk about his fight in a second here. But literally, I was sitting next to Steve Kim. We were watching the Golovkin-Brook fight, and it wasn't 2-3 minutes after that fight ended that Daniel Jacobs' trainer, Andre, called Steve. I heard Steve's phone ring. I'm like, go ahead, answer it, whatever. Picks it up, turn down the TV, and Steve is like, holy shit, it's Jacobs' guy, Jacobs' trainer. And some stuff was on the record, a lot of stuff was off the record. Can't talk about it. But long story short, they're feeling very, very confident and talking a lot of smack after that Golovkin-Brook fight. Literally 15 minutes later after that, email from Gilberto Mendoza talking about they are going to start the 30-day negotiation process between Jacobs and Golovkin, and they got to come up with something in 30 days or it goes to purse bid. They have to fight within 120 days, which I'm not a math genius, but would take us into early 2017. So, hey man, you want to be a big star? Here you go. You got a situation where if this thing goes to purse bid, since Golovkin is the super duper quadruper whatever the fuck WBA champ, and Jacobs is the regular champ, whatever the fuck all that means, I believe that I think the split is like 60-40 or something. I think Golovkin gets the bigger end of the purse bid. So you would think that the parties involved on Jacobs' side, on Heyman's side, would not want this thing to go to purse bid, that they'd want to strike a deal before the 30 days are up to try to get a 50-50 split, because we all know Jacobs is going to demand a lot of money to take this fight. He's thrown out some numbers before and they were quite ridiculous. So I don't think this fight gets made unless Golovkin gives up at least 50% of the purse, even though Jacobs doesn't deserve that. That's probably what it's going to take to make this fight. And I think that Golovkin's side knows that. So over the next 30 days, and by the way, Tom Loeffler is calling Jacobs' people this week to start negotiations. We'll see what happens. My fear is that this thing, probably we're going to see like the Canelo WBC situation we saw before, where they're going to grant an extension, the WBA will, to Jacobs and Golovkin until a date next year if they agree to fight next, blah, 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 the typical boxing business bullshit. Because here's the thing, there's only so many dates and budgets are tapped right now. Now, just so you guys know, HBO has given Golovkin a date of November 26th. That date's open to him, and they know that. They should be good to go for November 26th. So if a deal could be reached with Daniel Jacobs, who is not contractually obligated to Showtime or any other network, he could fight on whatever network he wants. Golovkin is contractually obligated to fight on HBO. But if everything could be worked out, Jacobs, if he's really, really serious, could fight Golovkin November 26th. What I don't know is if a venue in New York would be available on that date. I'd have to think either the Garden or Barclays would be available, but I'm not sure about that at this point. I gotta ask around. If not, hey, maybe that thing goes to AC. Who the hell knows? But I still don't believe it's gonna happen this year. Okay, I just don't. I just don't have faith that any of these fights are gonna happen when we want to see them. I do, however, believe it could happen in the first quarter of next year. But also on that card, the real fight of this card, Robert Easter Jr. scores a split decision win over the Ghanaian fighter Richard Commey. Easter is now 18-0 with 14 knockouts. The scores were 115-112, 114-113 for Easter, and one judge had it 114-113 for Commey. Easter's glove touched the canvas in the 8th round. I think it was the 8th or 9th round, and that was called a knockdown. Properly so, called a knockdown, but he wasn't hurt or anything like that. But that caused this to go from, I think, it would have been a majority decision win to a split decision win. Either way, it was a close fight, which most of us thought it would be. And, you know, I'd welcome a rematch. It was a pretty good scrap. I think most fans that saw it enjoyed it. I don't think we'll see a rematch anytime soon. I think Easter's going to go on to bigger and better things from here. It'll be interesting to see how things develop for him next year. I'd love to see him in the ring again at some point this year, but the way these things have been working out under his promotional or managerial banner, I don't think we'll see him in the ring again this year. Let's talk about the action on Saturday, the 10th. We'll start over in London with Golovkin-Brook. So unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you know that Golovkin scored a 5th round TKO over Kell Brook. Kell Brook is now 36-1 with 25 knockouts, suffers his first loss as a pro. Golovkin improves to 36 and 33 knockouts. And immediately after this fight, I found it funny that Daniel Jacobs people, as I talked about, the Eubank family, senior and junior, and Billy Joe Saunders were all talking shit. Adrian Broner was tweeting shit. There were a lot of people out there tweeting stuff about how Golovkin eats shit, I'll fight him next, let's make the fight happen, blah, blah, blah. All the typical nonsense, okay? Let's talk about the actual fight. Kell Brook actually, I thought, did very, very well for himself. And I thought his stock rose in his performance for several reasons. But the fight was over 30 seconds in when Golovkin threw the first hard jab and it knocked Brook back 3 feet. Fight was over. Like I said, me and Steve Kim were watching the fight together, and Steve said, he's like, we'll know how long this is going to go or how it's going to go when that first jab lands. And right in the first round, bam, there was one, I think it was to the chest, and Brook flew back a few feet, and we were both like, okay, that's it. Golovkin can do whatever he wants with them. Later in that first round, he threw a double left hook, which he had set up behind the jab. And he got Brook against the ropes, and it was to the body, it was to the head. And that was the shot that shattered that eye socket, Brook's eye socket. It wobbled Brook. He wobbled, and he immediately covered up. And it was toward the end of the round, so there wasn't not that much danger in it. But it was very, very clear to see that Golovkin could push him whenever he wanted to. And Brook was bothered by that shot. Didn't know at the time he had an injury. One way that Brook really, really showed his mettle and his worth is he stood up to that shot and to other shots later in the fight. And he fought on, hurt like that, with that hurt eye, and really, really came out in that second round with a sense of urgency. What's interesting about the second round is Golovkin threw and landed more punches, technically, but Brook landed the better punches. And he threw I think it was a right uppercut, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a right uppercut that Golovkin just didn't see coming. And it actually brought Golovkin up. It rose him up off the canvas, on his toes, came up off his heels. It was a great, great shot. Perhaps the best punch that's ever been landed on Golovkin as a pro. So that was enough for me to clearly give Kell Brook that second round. And I think that it was unanimous. All 3 judges gave him that round. Most fans did. But from that point on, I thought that, look, Golovkin, I think he fell in love with what happened in the first round. And he came out in the second round and just fought sloppy. He was pissed off, he was angry, he was annoyed at some of the goings-on that week in London. I don't think he was crazy about doing this fight at all from the get-go. I think he couldn't wait to get it over with and to get back home. His hotel where he was staying was twice as far to the venue and all that than it needed to be. I don't know why they put him up way the hell out where he was staying, but it took him over an hour and a half to make it to the weigh-in on Friday. That's why he was so pissed off and annoyed. And there was just little things going on throughout the fight week and everything else that I just think irritated him. It was not a great performance from Golovkin. Not his best performance at all. One of the sloppier performances of his career, honestly. Probably his sloppiest performance since he's been on HBO anyway. And but I say all that, and Brook won that second round and fought well in the third round and had moments early in the fourth. But once Abel Sanchez got in the Gennady's ass a little bit in between the rounds, and Gennady settled in, it seemed to be about halfway through that fourth round, the fight was over. He got back to basics, what he was doing in the first round. He started working behind the jab again. He started going to the body. The fifth round was just a completely one-sided beatdown. Brook wins a moral victory and again shows his mettle and shows that he is truly a class fighter in taking that beating. But all he was doing was putting his hands up and saying, "You can't hurt me," while he was sliding around on the ropes and trying to get away. He wasn't holding on, but here and there. But like, he was pretty much in survival defense mode. And I'm not trying to say he was out on his feet. I'm not trying to say anything like that. But the writing was on the wall. And the fight was going to be ended by legitimate knockout, either in the 6th round or the 7th round. I predicted 8th round TKO. This was going to end in the 6th or 7th round naturally, just the way things were going. And then Brook's his trainer Ingle threw the towel in, and that was it. I invite you guys to check out Gennady Golovkin's YouTube page. I think it's just Triple G Boxing or something like that. They have a behind-the-scenes video that they shot about the whole night there, and they show him getting taped up in the locker room and all this good stuff. But there's a section in there where one of them was right on the ring apron, like right in the first row, and they were filming a portion of that 5th round. Watch that section. Watch that section when Brook is just getting beat up, and listen to the body shots. If you don't believe what I'm saying about that fight being done at that point, just watch that clip and you'll see what I'm saying, okay? So Ice had the fight scored 3-1 for Golovkin. I could live with 2-2, but that's giving Brook every possible advantage. And I still think that's really, really reaching. Come to see the scorecards. 2 of the judges somehow gave Kell Brook that 1st round. Somehow. Even though he was wobbled, he was injured. Literally, his eye socket was crushed. And he didn't land a significant shot that did anything to Golovkin in that entire 1st round. 2 judges gave Brook the 1st round. This shouldn't happen in boxing. Shouldn't happen. But this was a case where I think the crowd was really, really influencing the judges. And I think the fighters' histories, having seen Golovkin be so dominant in recent fights, made them feel that if a round was competitive, I think maybe they wanted to give it to Brook. You know, one of those situations. And that shouldn't happen with professional judges. But that happened here. And one of the judges had Brook up 39-38. 39-37, I think. 3-1 at the time of the stoppage. Absolutely ridiculous. But in the end, it didn't matter. Golovkin gets the stoppage, keeps his knockout streak going. Brook, as I said a few times, hurt that bone and was in surgery, I believe, Monday. No word yet on when he'll be back in the ring, but you got to expect he's going to be out for quite a while. He hasn't been the most active fighter. I hope that Kell gets a little more active once he gets healthy. He's going to go down to 154 pounds. He's going to vacate his 147-pound title, as I told you he was going to. That's going to go to Errol Spence now. But I think if Brook takes his time and maybe takes 1 or 2 soft touches next year to get reacclimated to things after everything heals up on his face, I really do think he could be a force at 154 pounds. I really, really do. He is a very good fighter. I felt he was the best welterweight in the world before this fight with Golovkin. I no longer think he's a welterweight. I don't rate him there. He's a junior middleweight. And, I can't rate him there yet, but I think we'll know within that first fight or 2 back. I really think that, once he's healthy, I'd favor him against the Charlo brothers. I'd favor him against Irislandy Lara. I don't know if I'd favor him against, J-Rock or Andrade. I don't know how much longer Andrade will be a junior middleweight. He's going to be going to middleweight soon. But Brook would be right in the mix there. He really would be right in the mix at that weight. So guys, the stoppage, real quick about that. I'll admit, when I first saw that stoppage, I was like, what the hell is this? He's not out on his feet yet. He's still trying to fight back. Why are they stopping him? I didn't know at the time he was injured. His corner knew he was injured. His corner saved his career. Any of you bitching about premature stoppage or any of that, go back and watch Manny Pacquiao's beatdown of Antonio Margarito several years back. It changed Margarito's career. It ended it pretty much as far as him being a real key player. But it changed his life, man. His life. That eye's gone forever, right? So, guys, smart thing to stop this fight. Really, really smart. And I like that his trainer gave him a couple rounds to see what he could do. And Brook went out there and won a round, and he was competitive for a few rounds. But the 5th round wasn't competitive. It wasn't at all competitive. And the writing was on the wall at that point. He was getting beat up. There was no reason to continue. So great stoppage. Let's come here to the fights that were at the Forum in Inglewood. And I was ringside for these fights, okay? Yoshihiro Kamegai scores an 8th round stoppage. Technically, it was an 8th round retirement by Jesus-Soto Karass, who actually was dropped in the 8th. Man, I got this one wrong. Holy shit. But full disclosure, I wasn't following Jesus-Soto Karass in this camp. And I didn't know at the time that he was really phoning it in. He was talking about retirement. When I went to the fights Saturday, several people I talked to were like, yeah, man, this whole camp. In any interview you talk to him, he's been talking about retirement and spending more time with his family, all this good stuff. So when a fighter's talking like that, the writing's on the wall, especially a guy like Jesus-Soto Karass, who is a come-forward brawler and has been in so many rough fights. From the first round, Kamegai was going to the body, and he just looked sharper. He looked hungrier. Their first fight earlier this year, I thought Kamegai won. I didn't agree with the decision. I could live with the draw because, it wasn't a robbery or anything, but I just thought Kamegai did a little more. But here's the thing. Soto Karass was coming off a 2-year layoff. So I thought, well, he was rusty. In this second fight, he'll be a little sharper. He wasn't. He looked worse, a lot worse. So I think that 2-year layoff actually did Jesus-Soto Karass some good, and that's why he looked as good as he did in their first fight earlier this year, if that makes any sense, right? So for Kamegai, this is great. I feel very happy for him because this is a guy who's done it the hard way, just a hard scrabble fighter who's been in tough fights, very entertaining fights, but he's kind of been on the short end of a couple decisions. He's kind of been used as an opponent here or there, and he finally gets the signature win of his career. For Jesus-Soto Karass, he got his signature win a few years back against Andre Berto. That was his big signature win that he can always hold on to. And now for Yoshihiro Kamegai, he has that. And he's probably going to have a homecoming kind of fight against a B-level opponent in Japan, maybe late this year, early next year. But you got to figure at some point next year, he's going to be back on American premium cable for a big payday in a high-profile fight again. This guy's never going to win a title. He's never going to be that kind of fighter, but he's earned that chance to get another high-profile fight. And he's done it the good old-fashioned way, by getting in there and earning it. So I love it. Now the main event, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, he scores a unanimous decision win over Gonzalez-Cuadras. Scores 117-111, 116-112, 115-113. I've seen the fight a couple times now, and I bounce back and forth between 116-112, 115-113. 117-111, a little too wide for me. But for those of you out there who are calling this a robbery, stop. Shut up. Stop with the hyperbole. Look, I talked earlier about Daniel Jacobs' race hyperbole. You guys with the robbery shit, every close decision that doesn't go your way, you call it a robbery. A robbery is when a fighter clearly wins a fight. Clearly. I'm saying he dominates a fight and doesn't get the decision. Robberies happen in boxing, okay? They happen in all fight sports. Any sport where there's judges that control the outcome, robberies happen. This wasn't one. Go back and actually look at the punch numbers. And I know punch numbers don't tell the whole story, but they give an indication. Out of the 12 rounds, Chocolatito threw more punches than Cuadras in 11 of the 12 rounds. It was only the first round that Cuadras outthrew him. Chocolatito outlanded him in 9 of 12 rounds. And I think it was mostly early rounds that Cuadras outlanded him, and it was by 1 or 2 punches, okay? I thought Cuadras clearly won the first round. That was, I think, his best round, actually, was the first round for Carlos Cuadras. After that, rounds were close and competitive, but down the stretch, Chocolatito was the hungrier fighter. He was the guy pressing forward. He was the guy pressuring. And every time he landed, he pushed Cuadras back. When Cuadras landed, it didn't move Gonzalez back. Sometimes it stopped him in his tracks. He'd be coming forward, bam, bam, he'd eat a shot, it'd stop him in his tracks. But never once did I see Gonzalez get pushed back egregiously from a big shot, right? Now, some of you will look at Chocolatito's face after the fight, and you'll say, look at this guy's face. Look at the other guy's face. How the hell could you say that guy won? Guys, boxing, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but professional boxing is scored in a 10-point must system, not on whose face looks shittier after the fight. Now, the Athletic Commission officially says that Gonzalez was cut from punches in rounds 6 and 9. And there was a clash of heads in the 8th round that put a cut on Cuadras' head and swelling on Chocolatito's head. So there were cuts, there were headbutts, there was some rough stuff on the inside. And I'm not saying any of it was on purpose or illegal. It was a rough fight. Cuadras doesn't hit very hard for his weight, but he's still a bigger guy, much bigger guy. And I know I'm not saying Cuadras is 7 feet tall, but in comparison, these are little men. These are really little guys, okay? And 3 inches means a lot when you're 5'3". So Cuadras is a taller guy, longer guy, shoulders much broader, and the bigger guy just leaning on you, whether forearms are hitting you, whether the tape from his glove is glancing off you, whatever it is, maybe it's a shoulder rubbing on you on the inside. If you already have a cut and you've clashed heads a couple times and you've got some swelling, it's going to contribute to that swelling. And even if he's hitting you with punches on the back foot, which is what Cuadras was doing, he was on the back foot the entire night, just touching on you. He's the bigger guy. He's punching down at you with leverage. Even if he's slapping at you, it's going to swell. So I don't think it was Chocolatito's best performance. I'm not saying it was, a showcase fight for him, but give Cuadras credit. I told you guys before this fight, he was the 2nd or 3rd best at 115 pounds. Guess what? He still is. I think Gonzalez is the number 1 guy right now. Inoue, who is ringside, by the way, is the number 2 guy. I think you got to put Cuadras right there at number 3. I'd love to see Cuadras in with Inoue as well. I don't think it's going to happen, but he's up there with any of the guys, the top guys in the division. And he gave Gonzalez a hell of a fight. Nobody really knew who Cuadras was outside of Mexico before this fight. Now people do. So even though this was a loss for him, it was a close competitive loss with the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. Cuadras' stock rises. Sometimes in a loss, your stock rises. You guys need to quit putting so much into a loss. It's just a fucking loss. It happens. Cuadras will be back, and now his profile is bigger and better than ever. For Chocolatito, I think it's clear. 115 pounds is his max, and he's running up on the twilight of his career. He's got another year or 2, guys. That's it. And he might be one of these guys that after a year or 2, or maybe within a year or 2, kind of ages overnight, right? So he's fighting well above his best weight right now. He's taken some punishment in these last couple fights, especially this one. I do think the fight with Inoue will happen. Question is, where and when? I don't think it's going to happen this year. Chocolatito has to heal up. HBO's budget's tapped, but HBO's committed to it. Peter Nelson wants it. Inoue and his people want it. He's a Japanese fighter. Chocolatito's co-promoter is Japanese. He's fought in Japan several times. Don't be surprised if this one goes over to Japan, especially if the Japanese promoters will shell out more money to ship Chocolatito over there. At this point in his career, yes, he's fighting for legacy, but this fight was kind of his legacy fight in his mind because he got that 4th world title in a 4th different weight class. That's something no other fighter from Nicaragua has done. His mentor, Alexis Arguello, the guy who got him into boxing, tried to do it and failed. So he did that for his hero. Now I think at this point, he feels his legacy is secure. He's going to go for the money. So I think we're going to see Gonzalez and Inoue next year in Japan. Mark it down. But some people are saying that, again, Chocolatito was exposed, his face got beat up, etc., etc. Guys, when you move up in weight and you take on top challenges, this happens. And I don't think the guy got exposed. I think his greatness was further exposed in this fight. I still rate Chocolatito my pound for pound number one. Now, I know we got a fight in November between Kovalev and Ward. If the winner of that fight dominates that fight, I'll probably put them as pound for pound number one. If it's a close disputed decision, I mean, we'll see. We'll have to see. But at this point, Roman Gonzalez is the clear pound for pound number one. And there are a lot of boxing channels you guys watch, some of the clickbait channels you guys watch, which you need to stop watching because they're fucking rotting your brain. But a lot of those guys don't even follow the lower weight classes. So when they say Chocolatito ain't pound for pound number one, they don't even know who the hell Chocolatito is. They don't even know who most of these guys in the lower weight divisions are. So just don't even listen to them, okay? Listen to the experts and the guys that actually have the knowledge and know what's going on. One last thing about this fight, and I've confirmed this. VADA testing was not performed. Even though this was a WBC title fight, VADA testing not performed. You look at Carlos-Cuadras' back, a lot of acne. No acne on the face, none on the chest, but a lot on his back. Kind of suspicious, you know? Kind of suspicious. And we have the right, we reserve the right to be suspicious because there was no VADA testing for this fight. So take what you will with that information, but considering the way Chocolatito's face swelled up, his face wasn't swelled in the beginning of the fight. It was swollen toward the end of the fight. And you look at the acne, there's no drug testing, even though this was a WBC title fight. Hey, I don't know, man. That's all I'm going to say about that. But also, here in America, also in California, just further upstate, Andy Ruiz wins a unanimous decision over Franklin Lawrence. I believe his weight was in the 250s. Look, for the last 2 years, Ruiz has stayed fairly busy. He's kept his weight in the high 240s, low 250s. I'd like to see him get 10 more pounds off, but that's a decent weight for him. He is now slated to fight Hughie Fury on the Fury-Vlad rematch, the Tyson Fury-Vladimir Klitschko rematch in October 29th. So Andy Ruiz, Hughie Fury, I like that fight. Great crossroads fight between two heavyweight prospects. The winner of that fight becomes a contender. Lots of action coming up this week all over the place. So in Osaka, Japan on Friday, Shinsuke Yamanaka is taking on Anselmo Moreno in a rematch. These guys fought last September to a split decision win for Yamanaka. Some people said it was controversial. They're going to do it again, and this is for the WBC bantamweight title that Yamanaka holds. He's held on to this title for 5 years. If he gets this win against Moreno and gets a clear, decisive victory here, I'd love to see him try to unify titles. Bantamweight, 118 pounds, is a division in serious need of unification and some clarification at the top, right? Also on that card, Mexican Hugo Ruiz defending his WBC Super Bantamweight title against Japanese fighter Izumi Hasegawa, who's been around for a while, good, crafty veteran. So if you guys can find a stream to that, I recommend checking that out. Japan, as I've stated several times, has a good boxing scene going right now. They got some really, really good fighters in the lower divisions. We travel a little west from there, actually a lot west from there, into Europe, into Poland, and this is a great cruiserweight fight. The winner of this fight, in my opinion, is the class of the cruiserweight division. Krzysztof Glowacki going up against Oleksandr Usyk. For Glowacki, you guys remember him last year and the great fight he had with Marco Huck. Both of these guys are undefeated. Glowacki is 26-0 as a pro, 16 knockouts. Usyk, who won the 2012 gold medal for the heavyweight division in the Olympic Games, he's 9-0 with 9 knockouts as a pro. They've moved him very fast as a pro. He's had some inactivity. I think he's had some injuries and stuff like that, or I think contractual disputes, but his level of opposition has been good for a guy with only 9 fights. That's what I mean by they're moving him quickly. Anyway, this is for the WBO cruiserweight title. Glowacki is 6 feet tall, 75-inch reach. He's a southpaw. Usyk is 6'3", they list him as. It'll be interesting to see if he's really 6'3" when we see him in the ring against Glowacki, or if he's more like a 6'1.5", right? It'll be interesting to see if he really is 6'3". 78-inch reach, he's also a southpaw. I like Usyk in this one. I like Usyk. I think he's going to prove that he is the class of that division. What I want to see from Usyk, I do think he wins this fight, and I actually think he wins by late knockout. What I want to see from him after this is to try to unify titles and set a precedent at cruiserweight. We need someone to do that. Too often these guys win a title, or maybe they unify some titles at cruiserweight and then they try to go up to heavyweight and do what Evander Holyfield did. Evander Holyfield did that when there was virtually no testing for steroids, wink wink, nudge nudge, and heavyweights were about 220 pounds. Those days are over. So Usyk is good enough. If he beats Glowacki and he knocks him out, which I think he will, I think that shows that he's good enough and he's ready to start cleaning out that division. And he could really, really set a precedent there and go on to own that division for a while. So if you could check that one out. Unfortunately, even though K2 Promotions is involved in this fight, they're not the lead promoter on it. Glowacki's people are promoting it, and therefore there's no American television outlet as far as I know. So you're gonna have to find a stream. The one fight that's on here in America is the one that everyone's been asking for, and that of course is Canelo Alavarez fighting Liam Smith, right? So look, this is at 154 pounds for Liam Smith's WBO title. Again, VADA testing not being done for this fight. It's not a WBC title fight, so technically it doesn't have to be VADA. But for those of you thinking that it was Canelo who initiated this, it wasn't. It came from the other side. They wanted no VADA. So once the other side was not doing it, Canelo said, why the hell am I going to do it? That's the way I understand it. But as far as the matchup itself, Canelo 47, 1-1, 33 knockouts. You guys know the story with him. Liam Smith, he's the guy that many American fans won't know as much about. He's 23, 0-1, 13 knockouts. These guys are both the same height, similar age. I think Liam Smith is a year or two older, but Canelo's been fighting 3 years longer as a pro because Canelo went pro as a 15-year-old. Both of these guys come from fighter families. They both have brothers who fight and relatives all over the place, cousins and uncles and stuff that fought. So these guys know how to fight. And even though a lot of people don't know about Smith, he comes from a fighting family. His brothers can fight, and they're all pretty athletic guys. Here's the thing. Smith is making a quantum leap in opposition. He hasn't fought anybody in the stratosphere of even an Amir Khan that Canelo fought earlier this year. So I do think, and also this is his first time fighting outside of the UK and fighting in the United States. It's going to be a very, very pro Canelo house there in Arlington, Texas at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. I think they call it AT&T Stadium now. The crowd's going to be hostile. I do think some British fans will travel, but they're going to be drowned out by about 30,000 Mexican-American fans. And having never fought on the road like this, having never fought anyone remotely in the top 10 at 154, I don't care what the sanctioning organization ratings were, so don't even start with that shit. He hasn't fought a top guy. I do expect Smith, because of his athleticism and because he is a natural scrapper, a natural fighter, I do think he's going to give Canelo some early competitive rounds. But a lot of people are saying this is going to be a very close competitive fight. I disagree. I think it will be for a few rounds, maybe even through the first half of the fight. But I like Canelo Alvarez to chop down Liam Smith and knock him out late. I'm taking Canelo Alvarez late TKO in this fight. Now, the co-feature is actually the fight I'm kind of interested in. These are both Triple G victims, Gabe Rosado and Willie Monroe, going up in the ring against each other. Willie Monroe, 5'10", 74-inch reach, southpaw. Here's the thing with Willie. Only 6 knockouts in 22 pro fights. he can't punch his way out of a wet paper bag, right? So I think he's far more skilled than Gabe Rosado and a lot more fresher than him. And look, Gabe Rosado fought earlier this year on the Vargas Salido undercard, and he fought Antonio Gutierrez. So I think, I'm not sure if Gutierrez was undefeated at the time, but he got the decision, Rosado did, over Gutierrez. Many people there, myself included, thought that Gutierrez deserved it. So Rosado just hasn't looked very, very good in recent fights. He's not the freshest guy on the block. I think Monroe, fresher fighter, way more skilled, way faster, way more athletic, but he can't punch very hard. So I like Monroe by decision. I think this thing is going all 12. Does Monroe work himself into a possible Canelo fight or something? Maybe. We'll see. Also on this card, Joseph Diaz Jr. and Diego De La Hoya are both fighting. In those two spots, they basically got bumped up. Billy Joe Saunders was originally going to have the co-feature. Luis Ortiz was going to be on that card. Those guys fell out for different reasons. So both Joseph Diaz and Diego De La Hoya are fighting now in the undercard spot, the televised undercard spot. Diaz 21-0, currently fights at featherweight. Diego De La Hoya 15-0, currently fights at junior featherweight or super bantamweight, whichever you prefer. Diaz is from Los Angeles area. De La Hoya is from Mexico. Both of these guys have fought here in the LA area a lot. De La Hoya is the bigger guy, I think a little taller, longer arms, might be a little bit younger. I'd love to see these two guys fight each other at some point. I'd like to see De La Hoya move up 4 pounds, and I'd like to see a Diaz-De La Hoya fight here in the greater Los Angeles area at some point next year. I expect both of these guys to get good, solid wins and some good, solid exposure on this card. Let's see them fight next year. Saddam Ali making his comeback fight on the untelevised undercard. The last time he fought, he was getting knocked the head out against Jesse Vargas. That's it, though, guys. Let me know what you think. You know the deal. Comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. This was another long episode, I promise. We're going to cut these down. It's just been a lot of information to catch up on. So hopefully you guys were able to sit through the whole thing. But I will continue to put timestamps so you guys can skip forward to the parts you want to see or hear. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the fights.